Welcome to I Love Asian Dramas. If you like this kind of content, please subscribe to the channel to get notified when new videos are uploaded. The title of this Chinese historical romance drama is Falling for Divinity from Ichi with 24 episodes. The story begins with Shui Yiyang wanting to visit Bunyan to explain his side of the situation. However, Shui Fu forbids him from going and orders his men to eliminate Yiyang instead. Suddenly, a fake Bunyan appears and inflicts serious injuries on Yiyang. Just in time, Pei Ji intervenes and takes down the imposter to put an end to her mischief, leaving her in disbelief. In the next scene, the real Bunyan comes to Yiyang's aid, rescuing him and tending to his wounds. When Yiyang regains consciousness, Bunyan offers him sweets to coax him into taking his bitter medicine. She then suggests removing his clothes to apply ointment, but Yiyang shies away, feeling awkward. Although he knows Bunyan has seen his missing male body part, she believes he is perfectly normal. Bunyan shares a tale about Jiao Mountain, explaining that no one can enter or exit unless they possess the Migu branch. She proudly states that he is fortunate she was able to smuggle him in. Yiyang tells her about life outside the mountain, where strict rules govern the people, contrasting with the simple and free existence of those living on Jiao Mountain. Bunyan invites him to explore their way of life, and he gladly agrees. She shows him the sacred lake, rumored to cure ailments, and suggests they bathe together, but Yiyang feels it's inappropriate. Just then, Zhao interrupts them, complimenting Yiyang for being the first handsome visitor in 100 years. Later, Bunyan visits her divine sister, feigning injury to obtain medicine intended for Yiyang. Her divine sister sees through her charade, but grants her the medicine. Yiyang and Bunyan join in the village's festive dancing celebration, enjoying the moment. As Yiyang and Bunyan enjoy themselves in a stunning flower field, Yiyang expresses his desire to leave, which saddens Bunyan. Nonetheless, she respects his decision and promises to escort him down the mountain in a few days. Overwhelmed, Bunyan confides in her divine sister, tearfully revealing that Yiyang will soon depart. The goddess tells her that Yiyang's wounds can only be healed by a wish from the divine tree. However, this wish comes at a high price. Bunyan would need to replace the goddess of the Mystic Valley, guarding the divine tree and its people while never marrying until another wisher comes along. The goddess warns Bunyan that accepting this role would mean a lifetime of leaving behind her mortal connections and living eternally in the Void Realm, while Yiyang would forget her and all his experiences in the Mystic Valley. When asked if she could truly sacrifice so much for Yiyang, Bunyan affirms her willingness. The goddess informs her that Yiyang's wounds will indeed heal, but he will feel pain whenever it rains. Bunyan is given 7 days to spend with Yiyang, after which they will part forever. Yiyang, unaware of Bunyan's sacrifice, is overjoyed to learn he won't have to leave and that he has recovered. He proposes to Bunyan, who joyfully accepts. The villagers cheer for the newlyweds during their wedding ceremony. Bunyan prays for a clear sky, believing that rain during the ceremony could foreshadow future arguments, and gifts Yiyang a hairpin made from a Migu branch as a token of their love. Bunyan reassures Yiyang that if he ever forgets her, seeing the hairpin will remind him of their time together. Yiyang promises he will never forget her, for they will be together forever, sealing it with a kiss. The next morning, Bunyan asks Yiyang what traditions she should follow if she were to visit his hometown after their marriage. He explains that they would pay respects to his parents, and since he has none left, the servants in his mansion would honor her as Lady Shui, using his last name. Bunyan requests a surname of her own, and Yiyang chooses Bu for her. Longing for a child, Bunyan and Yiyang share a passionate moment. She playfully blindfolds him for what she claims is a game, but unbeknownst to Yiyang, she is sending him back to his hometown, where he will forget his beloved wife and everything related to the Mystic Valley. Heartbroken, Bunyan sheds tears as Yiyang finds himself bewildered in his hometown, unable to recall any memories from the Mystic Valley. Bunyan searches for Yiyang outside the Mystic Valley amid the pouring rain, aware that Yiyang is suffering due to the cost of her wish to the divine tree. When Bunyan finally finds him, he is in agony, but he doesn't recognize her and leaves her floating in the water. Luli informs Yang that Bunyan might have some connection to him, as he lost his memory during a year-long disappearance. Yang is skeptical about Bunyan's background and becomes increasingly anxious, realizing that she seems to sense his pain every time it rains. When he questions her about his past and where she was during his absence, Bunyan chooses to remain silent. Meanwhile, at the Shui mansion, the servants bully Bunyan, but she refrains from retaliating, determined to protect her true identity as Yang's wife. Yang, concerned about Bunyan, asks Luli for more details about her, but Luli is unable to provide any concrete information, as his investigation yielded nothing definitive. Later, Yang is summoned by the Empress, who confronts him about rumors suggesting he is no different than a eunuch, claims that could bring disgrace to the city. Yang vehemently denies the rumors. In a surprising turn, a gift arrives from Consort Chin, a jade Buddha statue. However, when the box is opened, weaponized needles spring out and Yang swiftly saves the Empress from harm. Back at the Shui mansion, the maids instruct Bunyan to do the laundry. When she questions why everyone else doesn't wash their own clothes, one maid harshly reprimands her, insisting that masters don't handle such tasks. The maid scolds Bunyan for not knowing the basic rules and warns her to perform her duties well. Otherwise, she risks being thrown out of the general's mansion sooner rather than later. Bunyan was hanging up clothes when Yang confronted her, questioning how she knew the Empress Dowager was in danger. With a calm demeanor, Bunyan replied that she could simply sense it. Yang, growing frustrated, reminded her that he could be held accountable if something went wrong with the Empress Dowager. He then instructed Bunyan to write down her personal information, criticizing her sloppy handwriting in the process. When Yang asked if she recognized him, Bunyan evasively denied it. To counter the rumors surrounding the Empress Dowager, Yang planned to use Bunyan as a cover, saying she would be the woman who spent the night in his chamber. He insisted she stay close so he could gauge the legitimacy of her foresight. This news quickly reached Shui Fu, who was curious about the woman supposedly seen in Yang's chambers that night. He ordered his subordinate to bring her to him, hoping to clarify the gossip suggesting that Yang had been castrated. Later, Shui Fu brought clothing to his beautiful wife, Feng, but withheld disturbing her sleep. Bunyan's spirits lifted when she encountered a pair of beautiful shoes meant for her. The maids continued to harass her, accusing her of having seduced the general, but this time, Bunyan stood her ground after suffering a burn from hot water. Thankfully, the bullies left her alone. Eager to meet Yang, Bunyan was dissuaded by Luli, who warned her not to interrupt the general, who was busy reading. Undeterred, she decided to sun-dry the books. Unbeknownst to her, the general was watching her from a distance, smiling. When it suddenly started to rain, Yang experienced intense pain, and Bunyan rushed to his side to comfort him. Yang scolded Bunyan for entering his chamber without permission, but she brushed off his irritated demeanor and coaxed him into taking his medicine. He began to realize that Bunyan's presence eased his pain whenever it rained. In a surprisingly generous moment, Yang promised to buy her more shoes, which delighted Bunyan. As he took the bitter medicine, she sweetened the experience by offering him treats, knowing how much he hated the aftertaste. Meanwhile, Shui Fu invited his father-in-law to celebrate his wife Feng's upcoming birthday, hoping to bring her some joy. Feng's father reminded her that it was time to bear children, fulfilling her role in a noble family, and she agreed. Once his father-in-law left, Shui Fu hurt her with harsh words, revealing that although she lacked loyalty, her father, a minister, remained devoted to him. The young mistress understood that her husband had married her for his own gain, leaving her upset about the situation. The maids continued to bully Bunyan, tossing her shoes into the water, unaware that the general was observing their mischief from a distance. Yang entered the water and scooped Bunyan into his arms. During the ensuing investigation, the maids twisted facts to protect themselves, accusing Bunyan of trying to frame them to attract the general's attention. Yang directed Luli to deal with the bullies. In an effort to impress him, Bunyan tried cooking for Yang, confident her culinary skills, honed from lessons with the cook, would impress him. However, her cooking left Yang terrified, prompting him to flee at the thought of tasting her dish. Bunyan was deep in thought about how to draw closer to Yang when she suddenly had a premonition that he was in danger. Concerned for his safety, she approached the horses and cautioned them not to kick anyone off. When Luli spotted her, he teased her about informing the general that she was foolish, but it didn't bother her at all. Bunyan disapproved of Yang riding in a carriage due to the danger she had foretold. To distract her, he cleverly shifted her attention to the tree house she had built, hoping to slip away from her. Meanwhile, young Mistress Feng was enduring the pain of moxibustion in her quest to conceive a child. Bunyan followed Yang everywhere, even when he wanted to take a bath. However, he blindfolded her for his privacy, much to his embarrassment. On the night when Yang ventured out with Luli for an investigation, the danger Bunyan had predicted came to pass, further convincing Yang of her unique foresight. It turned out that Xuefu's anger towards his wife stemmed from a misunderstanding. He had seen a shadow that looked like Feng and Yang sharing a kiss, leading him to lose affection for his wife. A subordinate of Xuefu informed him of Yang's movements, and Xuefu expressed a desire to meet Bunyan. Yang approached Bunyan to test her abilities by asking her to guess what Luli was bringing, and she successfully answered correctly. Bunyan was thrilled with the beautiful shoes Yang had gifted her. It was revealed that she and the goddess had made a pact concerning Yang's fate. She promised to protect him first before taking on her responsibilities, but she was required to return to Zhaoao Mountain before the first snow of the year. Bunyan received a letter from Xuefu's side, and Luli notified Yang about it. Yang stated that the decision on how to proceed was entirely up to Bunyan. Yang and Luli discreetly followed Bunyan to see where she would go next. At the market, Bunyan crafted a bamboo wind chime for her beloved. A vendor presented her with a red string, symbolizing that the matchmaking god had connected them for a lifetime. However, Bunyan declined, knowing her time with Yang was limited. Unexpectedly, Pei Ji appeared and shared a pleasant conversation with Bunyan, which ignited Yang's jealousy from a distance. Pei Ji requested the bamboo wind chime, and although Bunyan hesitated because it was meant for Yang, she ultimately decided to give it to Pei Ji. He then invited her to his house, but she playfully asked whether he had someone special in his life. Yang ordered Luli to investigate Pei Ji's background further. Bunyan received another letter, but decided to toss it aside. While exploring Yang's chamber, she noticed several paintings of women. Luli explained that the paintings were gifts from the Empress Dowager, expressing gratitude for saving her life, and were intended for Yang to consider eligible ladies from noble families as potential princess consorts. This revelation upset Bunyan, prompting her to leave the room in distress. Yang commanded Luli to burn the paintings and inform the Empress Dowager that he was already devoted to someone special, though he kept that person's identity a secret. Later, Pei Ji cheered Bunyan up by giving her persimmons. He then expressed concern about her vow to the goddess, knowing it meant she could no longer marry, which troubled him. Bunyan reassured him that if she became the goddess, she would use her foresight to predict when he would marry and have children, and even how many he would have. She requested Pei Ji to teach her the customs of Fuzi City, to which he replied that she wouldn't have to worry about rules while with him, bringing a smile to her face. However, when Bunyan touched Pei Ji's head, a troubling vision of his tombstone flashed before her eyes, leaving her feeling uneasy. Meanwhile, the emperor was furious with Xuefu for failing to apprehend all the bandits outside the city and decided to assign the task to Yang instead, inciting Xuefu's anger further. Yang felt a deep concern for Bunyan's injuries. Fortunately, the doctor had prescribed her medication, but several days had passed and Bunyan still hadn't recovered. In light of this, Yang urged Luli to seek another doctor to assist with Bunyan's healing. Just then, Pei Ji arrived and offered to help heal her himself. A heated argument ensued between Yang and Pei Ji regarding Bunyan's well-being. Peiji revealed that he had kept Bunyan in his residence because of her gift of foresight, explaining that every time she used her ability, her body faced a backlash. Anger simmered in Peiji as he expressed his worries about Bunyan's condition. They decided to add medicine to Bunyan's bath, and Yang opted to stay with her while she remained unconscious. When Bunyan finally regained consciousness, Peiji suggested that they head home together, but she politely declined, stating that she had unfinished business and needed to be near Yang. Peiji then handed her a sachet designed to boost her vital energy and ward off evil spirits, with the stipulation that she needed to meet him every 10 days to replace the herbs inside. Curious about their hometown, Yang inquired further, but Peiji playfully teased him, noting that despite Bunyan having stayed at his place for some time, she still hadn't shared her home address with him. To provoke jealousy, Peiji concocted a fictitious story claiming that he and Bunyan had been engaged the previous year, with her as his intended bride. Emboldened by this misunderstanding, Yang resolved that as soon as Bunyan was nearing recovery, he would arrange for someone to escort her from his residence, thinking it best to avoid any rumors given her supposed engagement. Luli expressed concern over whether they would truly release Bunyan, noting her foresight gift, to which Yang firmly replied that, as a general, he was accustomed to living on the edge. However, Luli soon reported unsettling news. Bunyan was missing from the mansion. Yang speculated that her fiancé might have taken her, but Luli disagreed, asserting that Peiji was well aware of Bunyan's frail condition. Suddenly, Bunyan appeared before Luli, urgently insisting that Yang was in danger and that they needed to go save him. Despite her urgency, Luli hesitated, sticking to Yang's instructions to wait for his return. Unbeknownst to them, Yang had been captured by bandits, the very same group that had once castrated him. Bunyan entered the hideout where Yang was being held captive, pretending to be a blind woman to gain the bandit leader's sympathy. Just as she was about to be caught, an arrow suddenly struck, causing the bandits to die. Xuefu's subordinate reported to him that Bunyan indeed had the ability to predict the future. Meanwhile, his wife's maid revealed that Bunyan was attempting to rescue Yang, which ignited Xuefu's jealousy. In a fit of rage, he ordered the maid to prepare a bath filled with ice water for his wife. Xuefu confronted her during her bath, claiming he had protected her family by marrying her, even though she was no longer pure. His wife's tears flowed as she realized he no longer believed her explanations. Meanwhile, Yang remained unconscious for several days. As he recuperated in a cave, Bunyan stayed by his side, caring for him. When Yang asked if she was engaged to Peiji, she clarified that she was promised to someone else and that Peiji was more like a brother to her. As the rain poured, Yang groaned in pain, prompting Bunyan to comfort him with a kiss, leading to a passionate moment between them. Concerned for Bunyan, Peiji set out to find her, ultimately discovering her looking weak and fragile. When Bunyan informed Peiji that Yang was with her, jealousy flared within him. He reminded her that she was on the path to becoming a goddess and was not permitted to marry. Bunyan vowed that she would leave before the first snow fell, but as they were speaking, she lost consciousness, leaving Yang alone. Upon waking, Yang searched for Bunyan, only to find she was gone. Bunyan insisted to Peiji that she needed to return to Yang due to his injuries, but they were soon captured by Xuefu's men. Excited to present a hairpin to his wife, Xuefu's mood quickly soured when he overheard her discussing a book given to her by Yang, leading him to jealousy once again. The truth was that Feng was reading it to understand her husband's odd fixation, misunderstanding the whole situation. When she visited Xuefu, she found him surrounded by several women. In a cruel twist, Xuefu publicly humiliated her by instructing Feng to undress in front of him. Fortunately, the situation was saved by the timely arrival of Peiji and Bunyan. Upon seeing a vision of Xuefu killing Yang, Bunyan panicked, realizing that if Xuefu could not use her abilities, he might harm Peiji instead, something she wanted to avoid at all costs. Bunyan then foresaw that Xuefu planned to marry her. He smugly stated that while she could no longer be his wife, she would instead become his concubine. Promising her more than Yang ever could, Xuefu ordered his men to prepare a feast for the next day in celebration of their upcoming marriage. In a twist, young Mistress Feng paid Bunyan a visit in her cell, offering her a poisoned pastry that Bunyan wisely chose not to eat. Later, Xuefu visited his ailing wife, revealing that he intended to marry Bunyan. Feng cried, feeling heartbroken at the thought of sharing her husband with another woman, and began to question whether he truly married her out of love. At Bunyan's wedding to Xuefu, she urged him not to rush the ceremony, suggesting that he might want her to see something in the future. When Xuefu inquired about when he would ascend to power, Bunyan hesitated, explaining that she needed time to carefully reflect on her response. Suddenly, a report came in that Qing'an City was under siege. The wedding was abruptly interrupted, as Xuefu needed to leave immediately for battle. Feng's maid voiced her concerns, stating that her young mistress was unconscious and should not accompany the army, but Xuefu dismissed her worries. In the meantime, Luli informed Yang that Bunyan had been taken away by Xuefu to foresee the war, which infuriated Yang. Pei Ji, concerned about the toll Bunyan's special abilities had taken on her, worried for her safety. Bunyan insisted that Pei Ji should go and help treat the wounded, but he refused to leave her side. In a desperate move, Pei Ji contemplated poisoning the soldiers to protect Bunyan, a plan she flatly rejected. Noticing a tattoo on Pei Ji's arm, Bunyan inquired about it, but he brushed it off as nothing significant. Meanwhile, Yang overheard soldiers grumbling about the scarcity of food and clothing, realizing the unjust treatment they were receiving while risking their lives to defend Fuzi City. Determined to find Bunyan, Yang soon entered Feng's tent, seeking her whereabouts. Feng informed him that Bunyan was staying in Xuefu's tent, as he relied on her predictions. Their conversation was interrupted by Xuefu's arrival, prompting Feng to tell him that he need not lean on Bunyan's foresight, as he was quite capable on his own. Yet, Xuefu insisted on having certainty in his victory. Bunyan then asked Xuefu why he had stopped seeking her predictions. He replied that he had heard she might die from the backlash if he continued to press her. Xuefu decided it was best to keep her for a more significant purpose later on. He revealed to Bunyan that his wife was having an affair with her lover, but she refused to believe his words. Later, Bunyan visited Pei Ji in prison, where he urged her to always wear the sachet he had given her, which would help ease the backlash from her abilities. Bunyan reassured him that she always carried it with her. She pondered over Xuefu's claim about Yang's supposed affair, but her primary concern was Yang's safety. Fearing a calamity might befall him at the military camp, as foretold by her prophecy, she believed that as long as Yang stayed away, he would be safe. Just then, Yang appeared, prompting Bunyan to tell him to leave, not wanting to see him at that moment. Xuefu noticed Yang sneaking into their camp. When Xuefu's right-hand man offered to capture Yang, Xuefu declined, deciding instead to play along with Yang's game. The celebration for their recent victory over the enemy was in full swing, and Xuefu promised the troops a reward when they returned to the city. During the festivities, he engaged Officer Zhang in a dice game, consistently winning thanks to Bunyan's special ability. As a consequence of his losing streak, Officer Zhang was terminated. Meanwhile, Yang snuck into Bunyan's tent and shared a kiss with her. Bunyan learned that Yang had regained his memory, realizing she was his wife. She revealed that her return was to save him, as a prophecy foretold his doom. Yang reassured Bunyan, comforting her as she expressed her worries, promising that he would not die and would help her escape the camp safely. Bunyan, in turn, vowed to wait for him. Tensions escalated when Xuefu's right-hand man accused 3 new recruits, including Yang, of spreading rumors, leading to their harsh punishment. Yang was captured and tortured in front of Bunyan, who pleaded with Xuefu not to harm him, but her cries fell on deaf ears. She insisted to Yang that she didn't care to be anyone else's replacement, she only wanted to be with him. Yang gently affirmed that she was the one he truly chose, promising she wasn't a replacement. They decided to stand together against the prophecy, surrendering to the moment. Just as Xuefu released an arrow aimed at them, it was suddenly intercepted by the city lord's men. Yang was then tasked with secretly investigating the embezzlement of military supplies. With new evidence in hand, the city lord uncovered that Xuefu's trusted men were the culprits, leading to Xuefu being held accountable for his failure and oversight. He was ordered to turn over his command token to Yang and return to the city the next day. With the command token now in his possession, Yang declared that they would not head back to the city until they put down the Qing rebellion. Xuefu, unable to wrap his head around the situation, seethed with anger. Meanwhile, his right-hand man noted that Yang was in perfect health, prompting Xuefu to wonder about Yang's whereabouts over the years and the mysterious origins of Bunyan's divine powers. Bunyan joyfully welcomes Yang after his victorious battle, while Xuefu drowns his frustrations in alcohol, taking his anger out on his wife. Feng, heartbroken and disillusioned, realizes that Xuefu is unworthy of being both her husband and the father of her unborn child. Meanwhile, Yang and Bunyan stroll through the market, where they encounter a vendor selling bamboo wind chimes. Inspired by his love for Bunyan, Yang decides to craft a bamboo wind chime for her. As he works, Bunyan gazes at him with deep affection. Suddenly, she foresaw a looming crisis for Yang during winter, filling her with unease. She remembers her promise to the goddess to return to the Mystic Valley before the first snowfall, which intensifies her worries about what might happen on a snowy day. The vendor hands them a red string, and Yang eagerly accepts it. Later, Bunyan prepares a fruit soup for Yang, and in a heartfelt moment, he proposes to her, which she happily accepts. Meanwhile, Feng visits Pei Ji in search of medical advice. She confides in him about her pregnancy, but he responds with sarcasm, suggesting that the child isn't Xuefu's. Not wanting her husband to know about the pregnancy just yet, their discussion is interrupted when Bunyan arrives looking weak. Pei Ji hesitates to help Feng, recalling the trouble he faced because of her husband. However, Bunyan insists that Pei Ji assist Feng, recognizing her as a benefactor. It turns out that Bunyan had been imprisoned by Xuefu, and Feng had visited her in jail, advising her to delay her wedding as the city lord was sending troops their way. Pei Ji cautions Feng about her poor health, warning that carrying the baby could put her own life at risk, yet she is determined to keep the child. Feng shares her love story with them, recalling how Xuefu had once been kind, and they shared a happy relationship, but over time, he transformed into a completely different person. The misunderstanding between Xuefu and Feng stemmed from a seemingly innocent moment. Yang had merely been assisting Feng in rubbing a book when an unfortunate ink stain marked her clothes. When Yang helped her clean it up, their shadows outside appeared to be kissing, leading to Xuefu's misinterpretation as he observed from a distance. Later, Pei Ji examined Feng and provided her with a prescription for her recovery, advising her to avoid excessive movement in the coming days. Suddenly, he recalled that if the herbs in Bunyan's sachet weren't replaced, she could be in grave danger. He told Yang that he would accompany Bunyan to Zhaoao Mountain to gather the necessary ingredients for her sachet. Bunyan made a promise to Yang to return for their marriage, and Yang wholeheartedly agreed to Bunyan's departure. Curious about a mysterious box, Bunyan asked Pei Ji what was inside, but he deceitfully claimed it was merely some items for their sister Ajia and urged her not to open it. Ajia, concerned about the ramifications of Bunyan's vow to the divine tree, knew that with such a commitment came significant responsibility for their village. Still, Bunyan felt undaunted by that burden. Pei Ji handed Bunyan a new sachet, bringing joy to her. During a visit to the goddess, Bunyan expressed her worry about not yet helping Yang overcome the deadly crisis anticipated beneath the city wall. In response, the goddess reminded her that breaking her oath to the divine tree could jeopardize the lives of many. Meanwhile, Bunyan discovered that Pei Ji had left the mountain without permission, which meant his memories would be wiped by the divine tree, and the Migu branch could not bring him back. Yet, surprisingly, Pei Ji retained all his memories, leaving Bunyan intrigued. She urged Peiji to leave the mountain, believing that if he did, his death prophecy could be averted. Bunyan has now taken on the role of the new goddess of the Mystic Valley. In her heart, she quietly apologizes to Yang, realizing she cannot return to marry him due to her binding oath to the Migu tree. After centuries of confinement, the former goddess has finally found freedom and visits the tomb of her beloved, wishing to intertwine their fates once more in the next life before she vanishes into the ether. Suddenly, Bunyan is struck by a chilling vision. She is the one who inadvertently caused Yang's death, leaving her utterly flustered. Meanwhile, Yang has been summoned by the Empress Dowager, who punishes him with imprisonment and decrees 20 lashes, convinced that he poses a threat to her son's throne. In his dark cell, Yang endures brutal treatment at the hands of Xuefu. During their tense exchange, Yang confronts Xuefu and asks why he constantly targets him. Xuefu bitterly replies that Yang has always outshone him in their father's eyes and accuses him of having an affair with his wife. Yang firmly denies these allegations, insisting that he never touched Feng, but Xuefu is unconvinced. In the midst of this turmoil, Xuefu presses Yang about Bunyan. Yang asserts that she is his wife, but chooses not to reveal her whereabouts, which infuriates Xuefu. Meanwhile, Peiji inquires why Bunyan hasn't sensed his presence. She admits she, too, is puzzled by the disconnect. Bunyan realizes that when the former goddess left, some of the sacred tree's power didn't fully transfer to her. She only feels remnants, indicating that the sacred tree hasn't fully embraced her yet. As Bunyan considers returning the sachet to Peiji, believing she no longer needs it, Peiji insists she keep it as a cherished memento. However, it is revealed that Peiji has aligned himself with a fake Bunyan, intending to use her as a stand-in goddess for the divine tree, allowing them both to break free from their constraints. He refers to the fake Bunyan as Ran. In a shocking turn of events, Ran approaches Yang and calls off their engagement, all while he remains unaware that he is speaking to a woman who looks exactly like Bunyan, mistaking Ran for his true wife. Peiji had long insisted that Bunyan always carry the sachet because it contained the divine thread connecting her fate with Ran's forever. He believed that soon, Ran would transform into a human with a heart and emotions. Peiji's plan was to replace Bunyan as the divine maiden, allowing him to take her away and enjoy freedom. Meanwhile, Ran attempted to harm Yang, but her scheme was thwarted by Lu Li's timely arrival. Xuefu's subordinate inquired whether they should inform his wife about the massacre of the Lu family. Xuefu dismissed the idea, thinking that Feng's father deserved his fate for betraying the country. He felt a sense of joy upon discovering that Feng was pregnant and visited her, showering her with affection. He instructed the kitchen to prepare a feast for her. However, Feng soon realized that her husband had been aware of her pregnancy all along, which filled her with unease. When Feng's maid broke the news of the Lu family massacre, stating that no one had survived, it left Feng shaken. Later, she overheard a conversation between Xuefu and her maid, revealing that Xuefu intended to acknowledge Feng's child, despite believing it was the product of an affair between Feng and Yang. This revelation deeply saddened her. Peiji warned Ran that if she stayed away from Bunyan for too long, her body would begin to decay. This urgency pushed Ran to hasten her plans to reach the Mystic Valley. She brought Yang some medicine, but he sensed something was amiss since she did not offer him any sweets, a customary gesture from Bunyan after taking bitter medicine. Yang reminded Ran about their marriage plans, but Lu Li stepped in, explaining that Yang had not fully healed from his injuries, suggesting they postpone the wedding for a few days. The couple agreed to Lu Li's suggestion. Later, Ran summoned Lu Li to her chamber. Though Lu Li felt it was inappropriate and hesitated, he had no choice but to comply with her request. In a bid to seduce him, Ran revealed her true self, but it was too late. Lu Li realized she was not the real Bunyan just before Ran ended his life. The loss of Lu Li brought sorrow to Yang, while Ran feigned weakness to evoke sympathy from him. Yang was heartbroken over Lu Li's passing. In a moment of realization, he finally understood that the woman standing before him was not Bunyan. Anger consumed Yang as he blamed Ran for Luli's death. In a tense confrontation, he interrogated Ran, who claimed that Peiji had sent her with an urgent message. Bunyan was in danger at Jiaoao Mountain. To deceive Yang, Ran spun a tale that the tribespeople had forced Bunyan to remain with them at the divine tree in Migu Valley, turning her into their goddess and trapping her forever. Meanwhile, Xuefu was preparing for the arrival of his unborn child, lovingly arranging toys and instructing his subordinates to deliver pastries to his wife. However, he received alarming news from Feng's maid. Feng wished to pray at the temple. Xuefu was quick to agree, believing she was seeking divine protection for their child. Tragically, he later learned that when they arrived at the temple, Feng had taken poison and died. In her farewell letter, she expressed her knowledge of Xuefu's awareness of their child's existence. She wrote that she didn't want their child to endure the suffering she had faced. Grateful for the time they spent together, she could hardly believe that their love had wilted over the 5 years, now culminating in this heartbreaking end. With heavy sorrow, she bid him goodbye, wishing they would not meet again in their next life. Overwhelmed with grief for his beloved wife, Xuefu acknowledged his mistakes. Desperate to see her return to him, he sought out Yang, hoping that, since Yang had once been resurrected, he could do the same for Feng. Meanwhile, Yang compelled Ran to pay her respects at Luli's grave, and together they attempted to navigate their way to Jiaoao Mountain using the Migu branch that Bunyan had gifted to Yang at their wedding. Unknown to them, Xuefu and his men were secretly tracking their movements. Suddenly, Yang and Ran vanished, leaving Xuefu in confusion. Peiji had crafted Ran carefully, warning her not to seek personal vengeance, but she countered that she would follow through with Peiji's plan to usurp Bunyan. After all, she knew she needed the divine tree's power to achieve her personal ambitions. In a moment of vulnerability, Yang embraced Bunyan, but she instinctively pushed him away. Yang confronted Peiji, questioning why he hadn't brought Bunyan back to him. Peiji responded that Jiaoao Mountain was Bunyan's true home. Yang reminded him that he and Bunyan were already married, but Peiji retorted by asking if Yang had followed the customs of Fuzisheng, including proper matchmaking and betrothal gifts. If he hadn't, then their marriage didn't hold any weight in Peiji's eyes. Determined, Yang declared that he intended to take Bunyan back, insisting that Ran must pay with her life for killing Luli. Peiji explained that Bunyan could only gain her freedom if Ran was still alive. He elaborated that Bunyan had made a wish to the divine tree to save Yang after he had suffered severe injuries. This selfless act bound her to serve as the divine maiden, guarding Jiaoao Mountain for eternity, forbidden to marry or step away from the divine tree. Peiji highlighted the immense sacrifice Bunyan made for Yang, sharing how he had traveled far and wide seeking a way to set her free. Following ancient secret arts, he had gathered the corpses of 7 women, stitching them together, fusing their souls and bodies, and creating a puppet that resembled Bunyan. This puppet was named Ran, intended to take Bunyan's place as the divine maiden so Bunyan could finally be liberated. Peiji questioned Yang's right to discuss his marriage with Bunyan, emphasizing his own sacrifices for her. In response, Yang asked what he could possibly do to help Bunyan. Peiji gave him a grim deadline, stating that Yang had 3 days to rescue Bunyan. He warned Yang that once Bunyan became the divine maiden, she would lose all human emotions. Yang brought Bunyan her favorite fruit and flowers, but she rejected the gifts, asking why he was wasting his time at Jiaoao Mountain. Yang expressed that he needed to be where his wife was because he missed her dearly. Bunyan, angered by his sweet words, used her powers to push him away. Nevertheless, Yang remained resolute in his desire to be close to her, ignoring the pain of her rejection. Bunyan reminded him that since becoming the divine lady, she was no longer Bunyan. Her only duty was to protect the people of Jiaoao Mountain. Time and emotions no longer had any bearing on her life. Yang insisted that she had to see if he could truly wait for her, after which he lost consciousness. He decided to stay with the tribe's people at Zhao Mountain, while Xue Fu and his men searched for Yang and Ran, but their efforts were in vain. Yang then asked Bunyan to accompany him to Zhao Mountain one last time. She agreed on the condition that he would leave afterward, which he consented to. As they spent time together, Xue Fu finally found Zhao Mountain. Bunyan urged Yang to return, and in a moment of passion, he kissed her. Zhao Mountain came under siege by Xue Fu's men, leading to the tragic deaths of many tribe members, including Zhao, who was killed by Yang. Xue Fu accused Yang of breaking the barrier of Zhao Mountain, which allowed his men to locate and invade the area. Paige informed Ran that she had been chosen as the divine maiden of the Migu tree and urged her to promise not to harm anyone from Zhao Mountain. Ran, however, reassured her not to worry since there were no survivors left, prompting Paige to rush off to save her sister. Xue Fu questioned the tribe about how to bring a deceased person back to life. A tribe member explained that once someone is dead, they cannot be revived, but Xue Fu remained skeptical until a child suggested he seek the goddess's help. Xue Fu then encountered Ran, mistakenly believing her to be Bunyan, and felt a surge of hope that he could resurrect his beloved wife. Bunyan inquired with Paige about the fate of the tribe, to which Paige responded that events at Zhao Mountain weren't entirely her fault and suggested they find a new place to settle. However, Bunyan refused, insisting on her loyalty to the tribe. In a fit of rage, Xue Fu commanded Ran to bring his wife back to life, threatening to annihilate the entire tribe if she did not comply. Ran remained unfazed, countering that he could easily kill them all. This made Xue Fu uneasy, as he began to doubt that the person standing before him was not Bunyan. Unaware that it was actually Ran he was speaking to, Xue Fu offered to grant her anything in exchange for resurrecting his wife. Ran ruthlessly demanded that he cut 49 pieces of flesh from his own body, one each day. After 49 days, she would use her divine power to bring his wife back, with the warning that if he failed, he could simply find another spouse. Surprisingly, Xue Fu agreed to this gruesome task. Paige was furious with Ran for the fate of the tribe and his sister, but Ran expressed gratitude to Paige for providing her with the body she now possessed. It was revealed that Ran had been trained as a death warrior since she was 5 years old, under the forces of Xue Fu. She was instructed to pose as the daughter of the chief protector, knowing that if her true identity were uncovered by General Xue, it would lead to her demise. When the misdeeds of the chief protector's family were exposed, General Xue helped bring about their downfall, including Ran's. Xue Fu's subordinate urged the city lord to sell the tribe's people into hard labor. In an effort to save them, Bunyan tried to intervene, but Paige held her back, revealing that her divine powers were currently ineffective. Unbeknownst to Bunyan, Paige had manipulated Yang to keep her away from the divine tree, resulting in the barrier surrounding Zhao Mountain being breached. This breach allowed Xue Fu and his men to enter Zhao Mountain, leading to the tribe's devastation. As a consequence, Bunyan's fury was directed at Yang, precisely as Paige intended. Overwhelmed with sorrow, Bunyan wept, while Yang found himself unable to comfort her, still grappling with the aftermath of the tragedy. Meanwhile, Paige and Ran drunkenly spent the night together after Ran seduced him. The next morning, she suggested a way for Xue Fu to eliminate Yang permanently. She proposed that if Xue Fu were to claim that bandits from Zhao Mountain were attacking the young lord at night and that she, as a captured bandit, was to be publicly executed in the city tower, it would provide a justified reason for Xue Fu to take action against Yang if he interfered. Xue Fu liked this plan. As part of her revenge for her past death at Yang's hands, Ran unleashed her divine power. Although Xue Fu reminded Ran of her promise to resurrect his wife, he realized too late that he had been tricked by her, which sparked his anger. However, Ran quickly overpowered him. Yang aimed to confront Ran for the murder of Luli, but also found himself unable to stand against her might. In a desperate bid to protect Yang, Bunyan considered sacrificing herself, knowing that if she died, Ran would not survive either. Ran used her powers to prevent Bunyan from taking her own life, and she also ended Yang's life effortlessly. To Rant's shock, Pei Ji suddenly took her life as well. Meanwhile, Xue Fu was furious with his subordinates for losing Feng's body and ordered them to find it immediately. Bunyan was in tears, missing Yang deeply. Then, out of the blue, the Migu tree communicated with her, saying that the people needed her help. Although Bunyan felt guilty for failing the people of Zhaoao Mountain, the Migu tree offered her its last divine power, but warned that it would come at a cost. Bunyan faced a choice: to use the power to save the people or to bring Yang back to life. Ultimately, she chose to resurrect Yang. Once revived, she urged Yang to help her save the people, and he agreed. It dawned on Bunyan that Pei Ji and Ran had deceived her, making her believe that Yang was responsible for the people's suffering, which was untrue. When Bunyan confronted Pei Ji about his wrongdoing, he justified it by saying it was all for her sake. However, Bunyan told him that if he truly wanted to atone for his actions toward the people, he must fulfill one of her requests. In response, Pei Ji asked Bunyan if she would ever see him again after he completed her request. Bunyan didn't answer and chose to walk away. Xue Fu ordered the execution of the tribe members when they refused to reveal how to resurrect Feng. Luckily, Bunyan arrived just in time to halt his orders. Xue Fu was amazed by Bunyan's divine powers when he saw Yang alive, leading him to believe that Bunyan could also bring Feng back. Bunyan then informed Xue Fu that she could assist him in resurrecting Feng, but only if he freed all the tribe members. In a quiet moment, she confided in Yang that her intent was to buy time so he could help save the people. Meanwhile, Xue Fu received a letter he thought was from Feng, igniting his belief that she was still alive. Overjoyed, he runs to find Feng, leaving all his captives behind. In his imagination, he envisioned a joyful reunion with Feng, vowing to care for her and their child and fulfill all her desires. Unfortunately, it was all just a figment of his happy thoughts. In reality, Pei Ji and Feng's maid had plotted their revenge against Xue Fu, using musk incense and phantom tea to kill him. Afterward, Feng's maid told Pei Ji that she had taken Feng's body to a serene location with stunning mountains and clear waters. As they witnessed Xue Fu's demise, both Feng's maid and Pei Ji felt a sense of relief for finally avenging their loved ones. Pei Ji silently acknowledged that he had fulfilled Bunyan's request. Later, Yang and Bunyan strolled through the market, enjoying their time together as a couple. A senior member of the tribe advised Bunyan to leave the mountain alongside Yang, warning her about the devastation caused by the broken barrier. However, Bunyan firmly stated that she would ensure Yang departed while she remained behind to reseal the barrier. The elder was dismayed by her decision, fully aware of its grave consequences. Ultimately, it became clear that the cost of Bunyan's final divine power was her becoming the new barrier of Zhaoao Mountain, destined to be forgotten by the world. Only when the divine tree matured could Bunyan leave Zhaoao Mountain, and she promised the Migu tree that she would save them all. One of the tribe's elders approached Yang, expressing his belief that Yang and Bunyan truly loved each other. He didn't want to sacrifice Bunyan's happiness for the sake of the tribe. The elder revealed a troubling truth. Bunyan had made a pact with the divine tree to save both Yang and the tribe. In doing so, she promised to reseal Zhaoao Mountain, but it came at a great cost. Bunyan would have to use her divine body as a barrier and infuse her divine consciousness into the tree, enduring daily torment akin to burning fire until the divine tree fully matured. The elder urged Yang to take Bunyan away while there was still time. However, upon learning that taking Bunyan would mean the end of Zhaoao Mountain and the tribe, Yang chose to respect her decision. Bunyan reassured Yang, instructing him that if they were ever separated, he shouldn't be too sad. He should eat well, sleep well, and continue being a good general. Yang agreed, realizing that he had shown her not just love, but also the brotherhood among soldiers and the duty to protect. As a goddess, it was also her responsibility to safeguard both the divine tree and her people. Bunyan confessed her love for him, but emphasized that love isn't solely about being together forever. It's about remembrance, cherishing the memories, and celebrating the beauty of the world. Yang understood that once he left Zhaoao Mountain, he would likely never see Bunyan again. She warned him that anyone who had ever met her would eventually forget her. Yang jokingly suggested that perhaps he would marry 8 or 10 beautiful wives to fill his days, to which Bunyan smiled and playfully replied that when she emerged again, she would expect to see his 10 great-grandchildren. Eventually, Yang found himself outside Zhaoao Mountain, acting as though he had forgotten everything, but deep down, he still held on to his memories of Bunyan. As the years passed, Peiji lost his sanity and endured beatings from a group of men. Yang fought bravely as a general, defending Fuzi City. Time moved on. Peiji grew old and shared his persimmon fruit with a young child who visited him. Bunyan came to pay her respects at Peiji's tomb, which bore no name. Yang, too, reached his old age, wandering through life until he encountered Bunyan, who was strolling through the market. The series concluded with Yang and Bunyan finally reuniting after all those years apart. Hello! Feel free to check out another video or subscribe to my channel, and if you enjoyed the video, please remember to like and drop a comment below. Thanks a bunch for tuning in.